All right, so today we're going to be diving into some pretty fascinating stuff, I think.
Okay.
A little bit controversial, maybe, when it comes to relationships and masculinity, and all this is going to be based on The Way of the Superior Man by David Deida.
Mm.
Now, before anyone listening starts thinking that this is going to be like some macho, fist-pumping kind of manifesto, it's actually more like a deep exploration of the energies at play, between men and women in relationships and how all that works.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the best part is that, this whole deep dive is going to be kind of tailored for you, the listener.
Oh, cool.
So how these concepts that we talk about today, how they might actually show up in your life. So,
I'm curious.
yeah, excellent. So Deida, he starts off by talking about this idea of sexual essence.
Okay.
And basically it's this idea that every single person has like a core energy.
Right.
Some lean more masculine, some lean more feminine, some are somewhere in between.
Hmm.
But for the most part, the book focuses on men with a masculine essence and their partners. That's where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because Deida, he argues that most relationships, they naturally have this polarity between masculine and feminine.
Right.
But a lot of times people try to neutralize those differences.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do that, they actually kind of diminish the passion, the excitement, the spark.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like you're saying if you try to force two magnets together with the same charge, they're just going to repel each other.
Yeah.
Like you need that opposite charge to create that attraction.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
It's like that, that electric current that keeps things vibrant. And it's like how electricity, you need both positive and negative charges for it to flow.
Yeah.
And magnets, they attract because they have opposite poles.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it's not just some kind of abstract concept either. Deida, he uses all kinds of relatable examples to really illustrate his point. Like, how a lot of men, especially those with a strong masculine essence, they're drawn to things like sports, right? Where there's competition pushing boundaries.
Makes sense.
And then on the other hand, you have a lot of women who are more drawn to, maybe love stories.
Right.
Exploring, deeper emotional connections.
I like how he uses those examples. It makes it much easier to understand.
Yeah, totally. And it's not about saying, one is better than the other. It's just acknowledging that there are these fundamental differences in how we approach the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so Deida, he goes on to talk about this primal drive that men with a strong masculine essence have.
Okay.
This drive for freedom, purpose, mission.
Mm-hmm.
And he even links this to this symbolic facing of death.
Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, like the risk that's inherent in competition, or even the surrender of orgasm. Or just the act of pushing past your comfort zone,
I see.
And it's not that this drive makes men like insensitive or incapable of deep emotion or anything like that. It's more about recognizing that there's this inherent urge to conquer, to achieve.
To make a mark on the world.
Yeah, exactly. To like make a mark on the world.
I can see that.
Yeah. And he contrasts this with the feminine essence, which prioritizes love, connection, surrender.
Okay.
But again, not in a way that suggests weakness.
Right.
But rather a different path towards fulfillment.
Okay.
Like a receptivity and an openness to experience.
So this brings up an interesting question then. If these drives are so different, how do they work together successfully in a relationship?
Oh, that's a great question. And that's where things get, I think, a little more maybe a little controversial.
Okay, I'm listening.
Deida spends some time really diving into what he believes women truly desire in a partner, even if they don't always come right out and say it.
Okay, I think this is where a lot of people are going to want to lean in and listen closely.
Yeah, so he uses this example.
Okay.
Imagine a woman who is criticizing her husband's success.
Okay.
Now, on the surface, it might seem like she's trying to tear him down, right?
Yeah.
But Deida suggests that there's something deeper going on. She's actually testing his strength.
Interesting.
His unwavering sense of self. He argues that deep down, women want to feel secure in their partner's masculine core.
Okay.
That ability to lead even when she throws challenges his way.
It's almost like she's saying, show me you can handle anything, even my doubts, and you'll have my complete trust.
Exactly. And this all ties back to his belief that it's not about erasing those differences between masculine and feminine energy. It's about embracing them.
That push and pull.
That push and pull, that electric tension.
Keeps the spark alive.
Keeps the spark alive.
Yeah. He even talks about how different temperatures in women, whether they're more fiery or more nurturing, can be attractive to men at various stages of their lives.
Right.
It's not about seeking a specific type, but understanding how those energies interact and create different dynamics.
Exactly. For example, he talks about how younger women
Yeah.
often possess a very vibrant, open energy that can be particularly appealing to men at certain points in their journey.
But what might feel harmonious in one season of a relationship might feel off balance in another.
Right.
It's all about recognizing those shifts in energy and how they impact the connection.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
This idea that relationships aren't static, they're constantly evolving, dances of energy.
Absolutely. And Deida, he doesn't shy away from exploring the shadow side of masculinity either.
Oh, yeah.
He dives into those primal urges that might make some people uncomfortable.
Right.
The desire to take charge,
To possess.
to conquer.
And just to be clear,
Yeah,
he's absolutely not advocating for any harmful or disrespectful behavior.
of course not.
Right. He's just suggesting that it's important to acknowledge these impulses.
Yeah, so they don't become twisted or suppressed.
Exactly. True strength lies in channeling those desires into loving action, respecting boundaries, while still embodying that powerful masculine force.
Makes sense. So I'm curious, have you ever felt this disconnect in your own relationships, those conflicting desires? That push and pull between the yearning for freedom and the longing for love?
It's a constant dance, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
This is where your own deep dive begins. How do these dynamics show up in your life?
Lots to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot to think about, isn't it?
It is. It really is. Deida's ideas kind of challenge a lot of the conventional wisdom that we hear about relationships, don't they?
Yeah, for sure. And whether or not you agree with every single thing that he says, I think there's something really powerful about being this honest and raw, about these dynamics between masculine and feminine energy.
I agree with that. And, one of the things that I think is so valuable about his work is this idea that a lot of the problems that come up in relationships stem from men not really owning their masculine essence and women not feeling secure in their partner's strength and direction.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so Deida talks about how a lot of men, they try to please their partners by being agreeable, going with the flow,
Yeah.
avoiding conflict.
Trying to smooth out the rough edges.
Yeah, basically. But he says that this actually kind of backfires.
Why is that?
Well, because remember that feminine energy is naturally drawn to strength to purpose. It's
Right.
not about being domineering or controlling or anything like that.
Right.
It's just about having a clear sense of self. A direction in life, a grounded presence.
So how can we apply this to our own lives? What does this all mean for the listener who's maybe trying to figure out their own relationships?
Well, I think the first step is really self-awareness. Do you recognize any of these patterns in your own relationships?
Yeah. Are you, as a man, maybe suppressing your masculine essence, or are you really stepping into it?
And for the women listening, do you feel secure in your partner's masculine core? Do you feel like you can handle your challenges, your tests, your full expression without kind of crumbling?
Those are really important questions to ask yourself.
They are. And Deida, he offers some pretty bold advice.
Yeah.
Especially for men. He talks about the importance of prioritizing purpose, even sometimes over the relationship itself.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Even over the relationship?
Which can sound kind of jarring at first.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because you're thinking, wait a minute, isn't the relationship supposed to be a top priority?
Right.
But his argument is that a man who's really aligned with his purpose, who's living in his truth,
Yeah.
he's actually going to be a much better partner.
How so?
He'll be more present, more grounded, more capable of giving and receiving love freely.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. And he uses this great analogy of a tree.
Okay.
He says a tree that's deeply rooted can weather any storm.
Yeah,
And a man who's grounded in his purpose is like that tree.
I like that.
He's unshakable, and he can provide that sense of stability and security
That the feminine craves.
that the feminine craves.
Yeah.
And he doesn't just leave it at these broader concepts.
So he gives some more practical advice, too.
Yeah, he actually provides some very specific practices for men, like setting clear boundaries, saying no when it's needed, and even spending time in solitude to reconnect with that masculine core.
What about for the women? What kind of advice does he give?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of embracing the feminine essence,
Okay.
allowing yourself to be receptive to surrender, to be filled with love.
And he also cautions against women taking on too much masculine energy.
Right, exactly. Trying to control or direct the relationship because it ultimately creates an imbalance.
Right. This isn't about being passive or submissive, though, is it?
Not at all. It's about owning your power as a woman. The power to inspire, to nurture, to create a space where love can really flourish.
I see. So going back to that example of the woman criticizing her husband's success,
Yeah.
what would Deida say is a better way to handle that?
Well, he'd probably say that it's more powerful to be direct and say something like, I need to feel your strength. Show me you can handle this.
That makes a lot more sense. It's about being honest and vulnerable, trusting that your partner can meet you at that deeper level.
Exactly. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here, and it's important to acknowledge that Deida's views are, they're strong and they might not resonate with everyone.
That's true. Some people might find his language and perspective a bit intense or maybe a bit too traditional for their liking.
Right. But even if you don't agree with every single thing he says, I think there are some real gems of wisdom here. What stands out to you? What resonates with your own experiences?
I keep coming back to that emphasis on polarity that sparked that tension that comes from embracing the differences between masculine and feminine energy. It's not about erasing those differences, but harnessing them to create something really powerful and fulfilling in a relationship.
I love that. And Deida reminds us that relationships are a constant dance, a constant interplay of these energies. It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot where both partners can fully express themselves and grow together.
And that dance is never static. It's always evolving, shifting, changing, just like we do as individuals. What worked at one stage of a relationship might need to be renegotiated at another.
That's such a good point. We're not fixed. Relationships aren't fixed. And Deida reminds us that we have a choice. We can either suppress these energies and let our relationships stagnate, or we can embrace them and ignite that passionate fire that makes life so much more alive.
It's that aliveness, that vibrancy that makes relationships worth the challenges.
So as you continue on your own deep dive into relationships, remember this. It's not about finding the perfect partner or following some rigid set of rules.
Right.
It's about understanding yourself, understanding your partner, and finding those ways to connect that truly light you both up.
It's about embracing the journey, the ups and the downs, the challenges and the triumphs that come with navigating the complexities of love and connection.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more aspect of Deida's work that I think often sparks a lot of conversation.
Oh, what's that?
His concept of ejaculation.
Okay. This is where Deida gets into some pretty specific and sometimes controversial territory around sexuality, right?
Yeah. He suggests that men should learn to control their ejaculation. Not just for physical reasons,
Right.
but for deeper energetic and emotional reasons as well.
He even talks about ejaculating up the spine, which,
I know it sounds a little intense.
yeah, it definitely grabs your attention.
But the idea, as I understand it, is that by redirecting that energy, men can actually sustain a much deeper connection with their partners, both physically and emotionally.
And he argues that frequent ejaculation can create a sense of distrust in a woman.
Right.
A feeling that her partner is easily depleted, that he can't fully handle her power.
And this ties back to that core concept of masculine strength.
That ability to hold space.
To be a steady, unshakable force, not just in the bedroom, but in all aspects of life.
And Deida suggests practices like breathwork, pelvic floor exercises, even shifting one's attention during intimacy to cultivate this control and redirect that energy.
He even talks about the importance of men cultivating a full-body orgasm.
Wow.
Where that energy explodes up the spine and throughout the entire system rather than just being focused in the genitals.
Now we're not going to get into all the nitty-gritty details here.
We'll save that for another deep dive.
But it's definitely something worth exploring in Deida's work, if you're curious about these practices.
And I think it's crucial to emphasize that it's not just about technique.
Right.
Deida is really advocating for approaching sex as a sacred practice.
Yeah.
As an opportunity to connect with your partner on a deep, soulful level.
It's about presence. It's about love. It's about honoring the divine feminine and surrendering to that flow of energy.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into the way of the superior man, I'm curious, what are you taking away from this? What's resonating with you? What are you going to explore further in your own life?
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that we often operate on autopilot in relationships.
Yeah.
We rely on assumptions and patterns that we've inherited without even realizing it.
It's a good point.
And Deida's work, whether you agree with it all or not, it makes you question those assumptions, to really peel back the layers and explore what truly resonates for you as an individual and as a partner.
It's about becoming more conscious, more intentional, more aware of the energies we're bringing to our relationships. And ultimately, I think it's about embracing the beauty and the complexity of human connection.
Yeah, it really is amazing how much we just kind of go through life on autopilot in our relationships,
Yeah, totally. And we just kind of accept these ideas about how they should be without even really questioning them.
Exactly. And then we wonder why things aren't working out the way we hoped.
Right. It's like we're following the script that someone else wrote for us.
And speaking of challenging those assumptions before we wrap things up, there's one more area of Daida's work I wanted to touch on briefly.
Okay. What's that?
His perspective on, ejaculation and sexual energy.
Oh, yeah. This is where Deida gets into some pretty, how do I say it, delicate territory.
Right.
For some people, at least.
Yeah. He suggests that men, and especially those who are embracing their masculine essence, they should learn to control their ejaculation.
Okay. And not just for lasting longer in bed or anything like that. Right. It's not just about physical stamina.
It's deeper than that.
Yeah, he's talking about a deeper energetic and emotional connection with their partner.
I remember he uses that phrase, ejaculating up the spine, which it's a bit out there.
It's a bit out there, but
it gets your attention.
It definitely gets your attention. But the basic idea is that by redirecting that energy, men can actually experience a much more profound level of intimacy.
Interesting.
Both for themselves and for their partners.
So it's like a win-win situation.
Yeah. And he even argues that, frequent ejaculation can actually create a sense of insecurity in a woman.
Really? How so?
Well, he says it can make her feel like her partner isn't fully present. He can't handle her full energy.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Like he's not strong enough to contain her.
Exactly. And again, this goes back to that core concept of masculine strength.
Right, being that steady, unwavering force.
That ability to hold space,
Yeah, not just physically, but emotionally as well.
Exactly. In all aspects of life.
So how does a man actually cultivate this kind of control?
Well, Deida suggests things like breathwork pelvic floor exercises.
Right.
Even just shifting your attention during intimacy to kind of help redirect that energy.
That's fascinating. I've never really thought about it that way.
And he even talks about this idea of a full body orgasm.
Okay.
Where the energy kind of explodes up the spine and throughout the whole
And instead of just being focused, down there.
Right. So it becomes this much more holistic experience.
I mean, we're not going to get into all the details here.
Oh, we'll save that for another time.
But it's definitely something worth exploring.
Yeah, if you're curious.
In Deida's work, for sure.
And I think the most important thing to remember here is that this isn't just about, some technique or trick.
Right.
It's about approaching sex as a sacred practice.
Yeah, as a way to really connect deeply with your partner.
It's like on a soul level,
It's about presence. It's about love. It's about honoring the feminine.
And surrendering to that flow of energy.
Beautifully said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the way of the superior man, what are your final thoughts? What's sticking with you? What are you going to explore further in your own life?
You know what really struck me is how much we just go through life on autopilot, especially in our relationships.
Right.
We have all these assumptions and patterns that we've inherited without even realizing it. And Deida's work, it really makes you question all of that.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like a wake-up call.
It's about becoming more conscious, more intentional, more aware of the energy that we're bringing to our interactions with others.
Exactly. And I think ultimately it's about embracing the beauty and the complexity of human connection.
Absolutely. Well said. So if diet is right and our culture is suppressing these natural polarities, what does that mean for the future of relationships?
That's a good question.
What will dating and intimacy and even self-discovery look like,
Yeah, how do we break free from these old patterns and create something new?
Those are some really big questions, and I don't think there are any easy answers.
Yeah.
But I do think it starts with awareness,
Right. With questioning those assumptions.
And being open to new possibilities.
Exactly. So we encourage everyone listening to check out The Way of the Superior Man for themselves.
Yeah, see what resonates with you.
And see where it leads you on your own journey. Your deep dive continues, and there's always more to discover.